Hey everybody, today we have Mclando. How are you doing today?
Doing well. I had a bit of a rough morning, but we got through it.
Yeah, so what is like your background? Like where'd you start in Rocket League?
Oh, I had this open. Sorry, I had the stream open, so I heard myself again. So my starting to Rocket League was honestly just having like a passion for competitive gaming. I just come from CS:GO,
Mhm.
and I was getting kind of frustrated with it because CS:GO had this massive problem with hacking and cheaters that it was horrible. I mean, you had a commitment for like 45 minutes for a game. Immediately was just thrown in, and I'm like, yeah, this guy's cheating. And I just had a horrible experience with 45 minutes. I'm like, man, I love competitive games. Like, they're so much better than story games for me. I love competing against people. I like having teams. This sucks. I hate cheaters. So I was like, I talked to a friend. I'm like, is there any games out that like don't really have a problem with cheaters? He's like, well, I'm playing this game called Rocket League, and he showed me it, and I hated it. I was like, this is the stupidest thing I've ever seen ever. Like, why would you play soccer with cars? Just play normal soccer, right? Or like there's
Mhm.
sports games you could play like Madden. Like I was like, man, I'll just get into Madden or something. So I tried Madden, didn't really like it. So I was like, I guess I'll try it. Go to my friend's place. We play Rocket League for the first time, and I get that first goal, that very first one, and everybody knows that feeling of getting your first goal. And I'm like, oh my god, this is amazing! Like this is the most fun I've ever had. So instantly hooked within the first 5 minutes of playing the game, and that was unfortunately on my last year of university. So my grades kind of dropped a lot in relation to finding Rocket League.
Mhm.
So I just no lifed it. I did end up graduating, so that was nice. But yeah, that was kind of my first intro to everything Rocket League. I got obsessed with everything. Got involved with watching esports. I worked a security job up until 4 a.m. every night, and luckily enough, Worlds was in Europe that year, so I was able to watch Worlds entirely while doing my security job. That was for
Nice.
season two, I
Mhm.
think, of RLCS. So I was just like ingrained of like what is the top people doing and what can I do to like learn from them. So I think that's what started my background with coaching. Like initially was I was just watching like the best people immediately, like just from the very start.
Yeah, I think the first time I played Rocket League, one of my friends was like, "Hey, this game came out. Like, let's play it." He
Hmm.
was like, "Cool." I was just like, "All right," and so he 1v1s me. So this is the original season one. Dude is 1v1ing me. First time on the game. He's already gold 2.
Hmm.
So if anybody remembers the like old rankings, like plat was what top 100 and then everything else was like below that. Like we didn't even have diamond yet, I don't think.
Yeah, yeah,
So like he was already like champ 2 in today's terms. He's like,
yeah,
"Yeah, here's a controller. Play me." So I initially hated the game because I was just like, "All right, this is stupid. Like he's just
yeah. You
spent
just
too
got
much
wrecked.
time into it." Yeah. Uh, has set the path of me playing Rocket League forever. Nothing's really
Mhm.
changed too much. Uh, but then I think it was Lethemir versus First Killer. This was like I think season 3 or season 4 uh, of RLCS that I started watching like the 1v1 stuff. And I was just
Mhm.
like seeing the Cookser pinch. I was just like, that's really cool. Like I didn't
Yeah,
even know
yeah.
that stuff was possible. Uh, and then just from there, I think I watched like I think this season of Lethemir's like Road to SSL is the only one that I haven't watched and taken notes from.
Mhm.
Uh, and that's like kind of where I started, I guess, on my journey with that.
So it seems like you were more YouTube based than watching like competitive play at the beginning.
Yeah, well, it was more like the 1v1 stuff because I was
Yeah,
just like, that was kind of like my introduction into it. And then I started watching like the RLCS and it was just like, oh, okay.
yeah. This is
Like
cool.
this is really cool. Uh,
Hmm.
so I think when it comes to all of that, like what was it that you noticed the one teams were doing? And then what was it that you were noticing that teams were doing that could be improved?
I think initially I was more on the lines of just like noticing good stuff instead of like improving. So I was watching like the big three back in the day, like
Hmm.
those teams. Like, why are these guys just beating everybody? Like, it's so cool, like learning from these teams that just they only lose against each other because they were so good back in the day. Back when NA was actually on top of the world and not trying to learn from everybody else. But that was really cool to learn from them because I would every time I would actually schedule like my entire day around watching those matches
Hmm.
because they were just so fun. Like I wanted to see the big three. So it was really fun to watch them, especially when they competed against each other. Because I would be at a friend's party or something and just be like, no, I gotta put this on the TV, guys. This is more important than whatever you're watching. And like they'd be watching a sports game and be yelling at me because I'd put it up because like we have to watch Cloud9 play. We have to.
Yeah, apparently we might get that chance again. I think they're finally not baiting us this time.
We'll see. I have my doubts.
Yeah, it's fair to have doubts. Uh, so what was like the first? Did you start coaching players like to get better at the game, or did you start coaching teams first, or like where'd you start, or was it kind of like at the same time?
Yeah, so season 4, I was still getting involved with RLCS stuff and just watching from the outside. But I actually had a friend who was in the system. I don't know if you remember Verge from way back in the day.
Yeah.
He's a good friend of mine, but I had watched all of their games. And when they made RLCS, I was just like, oh my god, I have friends who are in RLCS now. This is awesome. This is hype. So I was like the biggest fanboy for a while, and I would always like talk to Verge and be like, okay, so like, what's it like coaching and like asking questions and being like just completely on the outside of I'm completely new to this, but I'm actually kind of curious of like what you did to take these steps. And he was just like an open book of information for me. I mean, anything I asked, he would just answer it, and I think that really just sparked my passion of, hey, wait a minute, these guys seem like superheroes to me, but it seems like I could do that. I guess
Hmm.
it seems hard, but if I like dedicate a lot of time to learning and just making sure that I'm up to date on knowledge, it seems like it's doable. So I was like, okay, so what's the start you can do? Because I don't think I just immediately coach teams immediately. So I was just like, okay, so let's do private stuff. So I would like pull aside friends who had just like started the game and be like, hey, like maybe I can help you like just go through the process of you starting the game, just trying to learn how people think. So I did basically what your first experience was, and just 1v1 people that were starting the game and just like kind of seeing, okay, this is stuff that you could be doing. Just try to like drive at the ball and try to hit it, and I'll just kind of like be here and help you and just guide you. And I'm like, wait, this is a lot of fun. I actually like seeing people improve. So even after like an hour of just being with them, it's like I see massive improvement from somebody who hadn't played the game. Now that would probably just happen naturally anyway, but I was still there. I was still like witnessing it. So that was cool. So I kept taking it like a step above each time. Like, okay, so now that we're past like the initial person, let's do somebody like the average player, like somebody who's plat. I'm like, well, I remember being plat, so maybe I can like tell them a few techniques I learned. And it was like, hey, you kind of want to not like flip there, or hey, you kind of want to just like sit in that there. They're like, oh, this actually helps a lot. Thank you. I'm like, I just told them two things, and
Hmm.
they're like really thankful for that. I was like, this is just my knowledge that I had off the top of my head, and I just like noticed it. Okay. So I kept taking it like a step above, and then I was realizing I was actually talking to people who were better than me at the game, and they're like, "Man, I just don't know what's going wrong." I'm like, "Oh, well, I noticed this." Like, I never even saw that. That's crazy. And I was like, "Oh yeah, no, because I have the replay, I can kind of like go onto a different POV from you and just kind of see like what you're doing." They're like, I've never had somebody do that for me, and I've never seen like an outside POV of myself. I never watch replays. I'm like, ah, I get it now. Okay, and I understand. So I
Yeah.
kept applying this and going higher and higher, and then I talked to kind of a B plus level team about an RLCS run, which they were really happy with my coaching for that, and they kind of recommended me to Monkey Business at the time, which was Com, Aeon, and Stokely,
Hmm.
and I interviewed with them, and that was my first like real big shot at coaching at a RLRS level. So that was like all I was focused on. I was like, I really want to compete. I'm really happy with all this. Been watching RLCS like nonstop since day one. Like I really want to be a part of this. Thankfully, it all worked out for me to get the spot there because I don't know where I would have been if that didn't happen because that was kind of my first big break. But yeah, that was kind of like my private coaching to having passion to getting too into the scene.
Yeah. So I'm trying to think like this is the thing that I've noticed with you specifically. Like a lot of players that you coach end up like getting to majors. Like maybe not necessarily like on your team, but like as you seem to like develop players really well in that high rank X
Mhm.
uh space, I guess you'd say.
Yeah,
And
I
like
have a
they're always
positive
getting
theory and
picked.
a
Yeah.
negative theory about that
Yeah.
because I'll start with the negative one, so we go to positive. I think I just coached so many people that it's just bound to happen.
Mhm.
So like obviously I've coached like multiple dozens of pro players, and the likelihood that they make majors. I've had four now that have made majors that I've
Mhm.
coached, if I'm counting correctly. It's off the top of my head, just there's so many. Statistically somebody's going to make it, but still, four is a very big number still. So I think that my coaching style is kind of aimed at more long-term improvement instead of just fix this now. You need to be good now.
Mhm.
Let's think of like the entire season as opposed to just like the next event. So that's kind of like the mentality I have is like if something goes wrong, whether it be a goal, a game, a series, an event, you always have the next one. So don't just put too much pressure on yourself to perform immediately at the highest level because that pressure will break you eventually. And I found that to be a problem because I used to do the opposite where I was like, we have to do good this event. We have to do good this game. We have to do good this goal. We have to do good like in the moment. And that just caused too much pressure to be perfect. We were losing game 0-1, and I'm like, damn, we almost played a perfect game. What happened there? Like, this is frustrating. Why are we losing when we're playing near perfect Rocket League? As opposed to being like, okay, we can play our game and understand that we have more chances and we're winning like 5-3, for example. Like that's way different.
Mhm.
So it's kind of like the mentality shift of like understanding you have all these chances, and especially with Swiss coming around, like that mentality has really thrived for people because now they're like, this is exactly what he was talking about. We have Swiss now, and we can just play for the next series if it's going bad, or play for the next game, or play for the next goal.
Yeah, I think that's with the way the season's working, I think is an interesting shift for the Worlds format.
Hmm.
Like I like that format a lot better. I think
Oh yeah.
because if you're trying to find the best teams, like especially for the qualifier thing, like I get
Hmm.
the hype aspect of okay, like it's top eight single elim, you know, like that I get for like the majors per se. But I
Yeah.
think it like if you're trying to find the best teams in the region, like I think the world's format is better at
Yeah,
deciding
I
that.
I agree. I had a big distaste in my mouth from watching the entire major and having teams perform well in Swiss to just be like at risk of being out after one series in front of a crowd, and that's it for them. Like they could play perfectly in Swiss and then just be out completely on the first day in front of the crowd, and that just doesn't make sense. You got to be rewarded for good efforts in series you've won prior because those should be important as well. You don't want to be like, Swiss doesn't matter. You're gonna have one life anyway. Just make sure you make it. 3-2 is fine. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, like especially for those teams that don't even get to the crowd.
Yeah, no, it's horrible. I always advocate that every team that makes majors should be in front of the crowd at least once. I think it's dumb that it's not. Why fly everyone out there then just have them go home without anything?
Yeah. What do you think? Do you think that's primarily budget, or do you think that was timing, like getting the space? Like
I don't
just
know,
from.
to be honest. I feel like you could figure out to have an additional day or a longer day to figure it out. So it's like it's possible. It's just harder, obviously, but
Mhm.
I, I don't know. I feel like you're missing out on a lot. Just even with good teams, like even like the best teams are gonna not have a crowd day. Like I feel like if you gave a crowd day to like Luminosity for instance, they'd have a good crowd to support them,
Oh yeah,
even though they didn't quite make
absolutely.
crowds. You're losing out on a lot here just by cutting off a single. So have a longer day, have an additional day, just something, but take a step in the right direction. Maybe not every single team,
Mhm.
kind of like meet in the middle. Just have an extra day. Like have a day where you have the elimination matches and the make it matches be in front of a crowd. You don't have to do all of Swiss in front of a crowd. You just have to have that last one.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's like a really good compromise that I hope they end up doing for the
Oh
major.
yeah.
Like even if it's just like a wild card scenario where it's like, hey, we've got 10,000 tickets. 2,000 of those tickets are going to be available for the crowd for the super
Hmm.
fans that want to be there for the elimination matches. So that way, like, you're not having to amp up too much production.
Yeah.
Like, I think that makes the most sense.
Well, they've done that before. They've done that for previous Worlds events where they've had like it was kind of like a smaller stage, but
Hmm.
it was still open to a small portion of a crowd. And you could definitely figure that out and have like a smaller thing in front of a crowd for days leading up to it. Some of my favorite matches were those. Like there were some insane matches in the early day, like in the early matches where they weren't just like the most hyped teams, but they were really close and hype. And it was kind of more of a family setting where I'm just around like 100 people. We're just freaking out over simple shots going in, but I was just like, this is awesome. This is kind of like what I started with.
Yeah, it brings it back to like the really old days of LAN. Like
Yeah.
before like the major productions, like the uh gosh, what Evo was it where Moment 37 happened? Uh the Daigo parry. I'm oh.
Might not
I
be familiar.
okay. So if you're not familiar with it, basically um dude has 1 health left, and so somebody uses Chun-Li's super because he's like, you're not gonna perfectly parry all 17
Oh
hits.
yes, I know this clip. Yes,
Yeah.
and it's just like frame perfect on all of them.
Yeah. Like I think he had like I think there's like a somebody did like the math, like the rocket science type video on it, and like
Hmm.
literally every single one of those parries, he had I think it was 2/10 of a second.
Yeah, it's absurd.
Yeah. But no, like those are like the moments that the more downscaled ones, like those create like more meaningful memories. It feels like
Yes, I agree,
than
and it
the
leads up to more hype moments later on as well.
yeah, because that way you get the small intimate feeling
Hmm.
of that, like like it's kind of like seeing a band before they get big at like a small bar. You know, something I've had a lot of experience with.
Yes, yes.
But no, like that's a that I feel like it needs to come back, uh, at least in some capacity.
Hmm.
So I guess
Yeah.
moving forward into like the coaching thing, like when you made that shift into coaching teams and not just
Yes.
players,
Yeah.
what was the mentality shift? Because I know if you're looking over a ranked replay and
Yep.
you're talking to one person, that is 33% of that game that you can affect for that team. But when
Hmm.
you're coaching the whole team, where do you make like the concessions? And where do you like get more aggressive? Like, what was your philosophy being able to tell everybody what to do, so to speak, versus just one person what to do?
Yeah, it was a huge shift for me because all I'd ever known was performance, and I never really got to see behind the scenes except for what Verge told me of kind of like what was going on with teams. So like I was way too gameplay oriented when I started. Like I probably was at my worst coaching state on that first season in like the first 4 weeks of just like telling people what to do. It was getting kind of confusing. So when I started out, I was thankful that the guys gave me a lot of patience to kind of screw up and like try stuff. So first half of that season, we performed very badly, and I would put not all the blame on me, but a large part of it because I was just still trying to figure out like how are we competing against teams. And I remember that shift around week 5 where I was like, it was kind of clicking of like, I see. So they don't necessarily want me to tell them exactly how to play. They want me to have a structure that they can follow, as opposed to just like, okay, you need to do this, you need to do this, and you need to do this. I'm like, can we all agree this is a good idea? Okay, let's keep this over here. The next stack, is this a good idea? Put it on top of that one. As opposed to just being like, you have this role, you have this role, go demo somebody, go do this, and just like kind of being like I don't know, somebody who's playing like chess. Like that's not what coaching is. It's more of just like you offer pieces of like structure that everybody can rely on, so that you play a little bit better and have reliance.
Yeah, I feel like the higher up you go, the less control you have to have with that.
Yes. Mhm.
Like if I'm coaching a team that was, like my champ team for a while, every single time like they got the ball and started an offense, I'm like, all right, do this play. All right, do this one. Okay, like, uh, and like they were football players, and so American football players, so they were kind of used to like, okay, break out of the huddle knowing that this is what happens, and so they knew
Mhm.
it's like, okay, we did our job on defense, and now we got a free ball to go on offense. Here's the play. And
Yeah.
so I like operated as their game sense, so to speak. But when it gets to that, the highest level, you, there's not time to necessarily calm that. Uh, like I still think theoretically it might work, But I
Hmm.
think the game's moving so fast paced that by the time you've said what play to call, them processing it and realizing it versus they've played the game enough that if you're coaching well, they recognize the situation and
Right.
they know what they're supposed to do.
Yeah, one of the biggest things that we kind of learned, and I think everybody's doing it now, so this is not like groundbreaking stuff, but there was like a shift of like what you tell the guy with the ball to do is kind of like, it's not a command, it's kind of like an option.
Hmm.
So like if somebody's like cross, like they want to pass, well,
Hmm.
that's an option. That's not like you demand, please put the ball there no matter what. You're just saying like, okay, I am here. Hello.
Yeah.
If you get the ball to me, I'm ready. And that's like an option and a very heavy one. So it's like, it's indicative of what you can do, not what you should do.
Yeah. I think that's where I think moving into like the highest level, there typically there's at least three really good viable options, like in any situation, like for anybody on the field. Like having that structure to like be like, hey, this is the one we're choosing, or like these are the two that we can choose from.
Hmm.
Uh, like I think that we're just picking up the pace more and more to where I don't think the play styles are like quite as improv as people may think they are nowadays. What are your
They
thoughts
can
on that?
be. It's I like to develop improv a bit because
Mhm.
let's say you're playing an easier team, quote unquote,
Mhm.
that you should be beating. People don't want to improv that. Like they're
Yeah.
just like, I just want to storm over him. I just want to make this easy. I'm gonna troll, right? I'm just gonna fake on the goal line, make them look
Mhm.
silly. And I'm like, but when we do go against that harder team, you're gonna wish you practiced it. You're gonna wish that you had these habits. So like I
Mhm.
think improv is a very good thing to have in your belt, in your tool belt, because yeah, it's boring, to just like not do the best play every time. But what happens when they counter the best play? You're gonna feel lost. So
Yeah.
you need to have that reliance on like a second option. So I always tell people like I don't mind if you like are storming over a team, but always start it in the mindset that I'm gonna try to improve. So it's like those first two, three goals, like you have to have in mind what would I do against a good team and do them every time. Like I do not care how easy they are. They could be champs. Like I
Mhm.
don't care. You're gonna practice those habits.
Yeah. I think I view it more like as defaulting, like in CS, where like you've got your like 1-3-1 or 2-1-2, like covering the lanes. But it's like
Yeah.
okay,
Mm.
these guys, we're always going to throw this smoke. One, because it's a decent option, but two, now we see how they react to this smoke. Now
Mhm.
they see how they react to this, and I think that's where now that we're getting to the point where teams have defaulting to a certain extent, like now we're really starting to see uh like the coaching styles come into play.
Oh,
and
absolutely. Yeah.
and like it's less the let's find players who have chemistry, which I think to a certain extent is a myth. I think it's more okay, chemistry I think is like the slow way of developing a team, if that makes sense, versus like providing a structure for them to work within versus let's just throw these guys together and see what they do naturally and then be like, hey, this guy's you like to overcommit a little too much, so like you just need to sit back a little more, or
Mm.
like this guy likes to overcommit and or politely say like this guy likes to be an aggressive third man, so you just need to make sure you're rotating out quicker, like making those small adjustments.
Yeah. I think that is in essence what coaching is at the highest level.
Mhm.
Like pretty much with every team that's at the highest level, it's just like you do this a little too much, so just hold back a little bit. And it's just like
Yeah.
fine tuning because they're already so close to being like at the top. So it's just like you don't want to change anything drastic because they're already so good. They're already like having so many spots where they thrive. You don't want to change that.
Mhm. I think I don't know. I feel like there's a balance between the two. Like it's kind of like playing like Mahomes versus Tom Brady. Like Mahomes is probably one of the best like improvisational quarterbacks.
Yeah, it's talent,
It,
right?
yeah, and Tom Brady is probably the most systematic, perfect throw it exactly to the spot on this timing
I mean, Tom
quarterback
Brady's
like
not throwing
systems.
across his body and just like contorting himself to get a pass.
Yeah. Like I think that's the like you see that both ends to a certain extent can work,
Yeah.
and it's
Mhm.
finding where your players fit within that.
Yeah,
And then
exactly. You wouldn't have Mahomes play like Brady, and you wouldn't have Brady play like Mahomes because they just would not thrive.
yeah. So Brent came in here. He said, for later when the discussion changes, what was your favorite team slash season to coach over your entire career? Pick a favorite child right now.
Oh man, I I have two, so I can't whittle it down to my favorite. But obviously, the PK run with Sosa Cheese and Zombie, and Sosa Cheese and Zanil were my two favorites to have because those were our best runs at top eights, and it felt like the environment was really good, and we were improving and bouncing a lot of ideas off each other. We all felt valuable. We all felt like we were improving. And yeah, I just love those moments. Like I still think of those like every day, just like the times we had together.
Yeah. So I guess leading into that, when was that during like your coaching career? Was that like middle or was that like mid late?
Yeah, that was a year ago now. Unfortunately, it seems to have flown away from me. But that was last season, during the winter.
Mm-hmm.
Both were during the winter. I
Uh,
kind of forget that was kind of pushed together. But
it's probably because like during those times, like was that? Trying to think what the scheduling was because that was towards the beginning of the seasons, or was that towards the end?
so winter would have been the second split.
So yeah, okay. So yeah, so like the middle of the splits.
Yep. So it was like it was the winter split. So it was like the second split. So like legit right in the middle of the season.
Yeah, those are always I think the most fun because everybody still has everything to play for. And then
Oh
like the
yeah.
third split, like you kind of know, okay, maybe this team could pull off an absolute miracle. Oh, they didn't win the first regional; they're gone. Like that's the that's the thing I'm seeing now with this new two split system is like the first split. It's not so much that it doesn't matter, but like it culled down the amount of teams that could theoretically make worlds. Like to very few people could. I'm trying to think how I want to phrase this. Basically, like it's still entirely open. Like it hasn't culled down the amount of people that like the second split did in previous seasons. It was like
Mm.
theoretically, like a team could come in and you know compete at the same level that Gen or G2 or Gen G did this past split.
Yeah.
And if they have the same results, it doesn't matter if they had 0 RLCS points, they could still make worlds. It would be hard to do it, but it's still nobody is out of the running yet.
Yeah. I could see like a scenario where somebody does really well. This next split, and then let's say like either Lumen or OG don't make major in their spot, and then let's say they misperform
Mhm.
at that major, where we could just have our set four just from the first major, just because like of poor results, somebody making it. So I think it's kind of weird that the two split system only has four teams making major because I feel like you kind of already have a showcase of the teams you're going to be following for the rest of the year, and that's
Mhm.
not a very good variety. That's not to say like a team can't just come in and like change that. Like I think there will be a team that comes in and kind of like makes things a little bit sweaty for somebody who doesn't make major. But I do think that it's kind of awkward that we already know like three-fourths of the teams already for worlds, like statistically.
Yeah, like it's going to be very cuz I don't really see any team catching up to like at least like the what is it 5 or 6 way tie for like fifth place right now in
Yeah.
like points and like so like the seeding is pretty much that's the other thing too is like the it's weird with the seeding right now with like how many teams are in that like 4 through 8 spot
Mhm.
uh which seeding in general was kind of weird like this entire season but I think us being seated where we did is probably what like ironically killed like SSG's chances is we just forced them to play like the two best teams like every single split it felt like in Swiss like because I'm trying to think they because every time we beat Gen G they ended up like going directly into facing SSG didn't they
I
or
believe
like
so. I think they definitely played like
yeah
every single playoff.
and then they ran into G2 and quarters like off of that.
Mm.
So I don't know. Seeding was really weird this season, but I think that's also just format and new
I
people taking over grows.
I honestly think the format's fine. It's just Swiss is chaotic, and it just happened to be kind of unlucky.
Yeah.
I love Swiss, and I love it going into playoffs. Like I think it's fine. I do think you kind of take what Worlds had to offer as a format and kind of apply it to, because I think that rewards Swiss even more. And I love Swiss. Like Swiss is just so fun to play and watch, and it's just good all around for everybody. So I think that they should consider that Worlds format for regionals, even because it's not that many additional games in my mind, and it kind of rewards a good Swiss performance, which you want anyway. You definitely avoid those those throw situations to
Yeah.
kind of get a different opponent and have those awkward scenarios like, are this guy throwing to get a easier playoff run, or like people they want to go against, or just like you want to reward good performance, so why not do it?
Yeah. So Brent had another question.
Sure.
How did you keep your team's motivation for the last couple events where you know you were out of the running? Is it focusing on long term growth or making the most out of an opportunity that isn't promised?
That is one of the hardest things with coaching, is that you know that you're basically done. And there was a point where we had a group where we had two losses and we knew we were out of the group.
Hmm.
And we just went into that last series like, well, this doesn't really matter, so let's just showcase that we're not the worst players in the world.
Hmm.
So it's just like a very awkward, like, well, we might as well not look bad.
Yeah.
Spin it in a somewhat positive way, but there's just times where you're just like, this is so depressing. Like, I cannot believe that we're just in this spot after what? Because series goes so quick. It's like an hour and a half. Like, we
If
went from
that.
yeah, we're gonna win this whole thing to this doesn't even matter. Sweet, in an hour and a half. We would like go for the ball and just start laughing at each other and just trying to have a good time. Just like, oh well, we suck.
I think that's I think that's like one of the funnest parts of competition. I think like in the moments where you don't care, like because then you can
Yeah,
just go for the dumbest stuff, and
that's exactly what we did.
because
Yeah,
because it's so dumb, it works, and so
we
you
were
look
just having
better than
fun
you
with
are.
it.
Yeah.
We could have been depressed and just not calm the entire time and just made it
Mhm.
miserable. But I was just like, you know what, guys, let's just have fun with it. I
Yeah.
don't. We just let's try to salvage a good time, because we're still gonna be on camera. I might as well
Mhm.
like try our best and just like have fun with it. So if we make mistakes, just point it out and laugh at each other and just have a good time.
Yeah, I think like ironically, like that could almost be like a good default way of playing in a sense. Like not to like build your entire like series off of, but if you just go into a game and you're just pre-jumping the life out of people,
Oh my god.
like you could catch some people off guard for like that game one or game two that's just like out of nowhere, and then their mentals are just like, wait, what's going on here?
I think
And
you're
then you
halfway
go
there.
back to and then you go back to
I,
normal, and so they're like,
do
wait,
not make that a default way. But
yeah,
maybe like a secondary if
they're
you're getting frustrated.
yeah, like I feel like there's room for that just to mind game the other team, be like, are they gonna do something stupid here? Or
Yeah, there's room for it. Keep it like
yeah,
a closet or something. Don't put that in the living room, but there is room for it.
yeah. So leading, I think that leads into probably the funnest conversation we're gonna have is well,
Uh
we've talked a lot about systems like on your stream.
huh.
And this is where I've said it jokingly. Like I think I'm the only one that necessarily, or the first one to talk about it more publicly.
Uh huh.
Uh, and so I noticed systems. Probably the first one that I really noticed was like BDS in what was it 2019 during like the COVID era. Uh,
I would think more of their Worlds run personally, but that's more of what I noticed when they were at their highest performance.
yeah,
I didn't really notice it before then, so maybe you did.
yeah. Well, I think they started it and then they just like perfected it the next year.
Yes, I'd agree with that.
Yeah. And so that's where do we start with like the language for that? Because like we've started, like I know I have like the ways I talk about it, but I don't
Yeah.
want to come across like be like, all right guys, here's the language everybody in Rocket League is going to use, and here's how I describe them. Deal with it.
I think
But
there is some form
for
of
most,
system amongst any team,
oh
even
yeah,
going back to the beginning, though. Is just, so it's like, what is your definition of it, so that it kind of like ties to, okay, this is exactly what it is and what it isn't.
yeah. I think the difference is how like the level of structure. Because the best case, worst case scenario philosophy, at least in NA, was it wasn't so much we're trying to get the ball here and get them to commit players here so that way this space is open that we
I
can
see.
then capitalize on later. Like it was the way I define it is basically like the old way of thinking is thinking about the game. What's the next 3 to 5 seconds?
I got you. Okay.
Versus systems, it's okay. We know that if they go e4 and I go d5 and they do this, like we're now in
Mhm.
the London system.
I understand.
Uh,
Okay.
and so now it's not just, oh, we're playing some like cool chess moves and yeah, I got a piece. Uh, Now it's, okay, what's like the objective of this team? Like
Okay.
midfield control,
All right.
etc.
I understand more now, and I think there's a good turning point in my mind when that happened, like
Mm-hmm.
kind of the beginning of systems. I think after the Cloud9 run was kind of the death of just freestyle play and just like
Yeah.
of just like, I'm gonna just ball out and hopefully it works out, and the next move is my move. Like that's kind of like what you're describing of, ooh, chess piece. You can see it a lot with like Squishy getting weird flip resets and getting it around
Mm-hmm.
opponents, and somebody might be there, somebody might. It's just so chaotic. I remember being in the crowd that day and just being like, I don't even understand what's going on, but it's cool. Like
Mm-hmm.
stuff is just happening. But I was also at Worlds the next season in season 7, and I think that is the beginning of what you're talking about, which is systems.
Yeah.
That Vitality run was
Mm-hmm.
so systematically, like they were so defensively structured. I have never seen like up until that point somebody who could just annihilate a team defensively and structure themselves in a way where they could just counterattack. And that's kind of what you're saying is like the next move, right?
Yeah.
Vitality did that flawlessly. That run, like at the time, like that was like
Mm-hmm.
the highest tier of defense I had seen. So I was impressed with that, and that was like when I was getting into coaching initially. So I took good note of it. So I think at like that season 7 was like the beginning of systems where it's not just free ball. It is now we are a team doing this.
Yeah. So when you started to notice that, uh, what was it that you were looking for when you were trying to build your own systems?
Well, it's funny because I was like, I was kind of like on the North American mindset of like, oh, it's cool that people could just ball out and have high talent capabilities. So I was like, okay, that's just all anybody's ever gonna do. And then Vitality came around. I'm like, wait a minute, why is this destroying everything I've loved? North America's dying.
Mm-hmm.
The flip reset's not working anymore. Just being fast isn't working anymore. Why? So I was like, okay, so let me study this up, right? So going up for replays, finding out the Vitality versus G2 series, really analyzing it. Okay, so defensive structure is somebody's guarding something that somebody is not. Everybody has a piece of the puzzle, whereas kind of NA at the time was just go fast, beat people, get possession, get boost. We need everything. Go go go.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, dang, there's a lot of value in thinking differently. So like I shifted big after that, where it was just like, okay, so why are European teams doing so well at this, or just like the best one? Are others going to follow suit? They eventually did. Um, and I think it's just a notice of who is winning. So winning seems to be the thing that everybody follows for some reason. So as soon as a team wins, they're like, okay, that's the thing that's better, as opposed to just like a team constructing something in like the laboratory, which I feel like Vitality did very well, and then they have a product to show to everybody, and that's where it showcases. So it's hard to like predict where the future goes until somebody wins. You can try. I really feel like there is value in trying to figure out the next thing. It's very very tricky. It's very hard to figure out what the next system will be. So that's why a lot of coaches have a lot of important roles to try to figure that out. Who is not winning, who will win, and how do you copy what they are doing is a very highly valued thing and very hard to do.
Yeah, I think when it comes to that, like that's been my goal is like what can like I want to like push that envelope. And I think
Hmm.
like we showed it pretty well, at least like the first two Swiss stages. Uh, Top eight, just mentally, uh, we weren't there. But I think pushing forward into the second split, but then also just like in the future, where do where do we push coaching and how do we get more qualified coaches? Because I feel like that's something else that's
Yeah. Yeah.
it's
That's a good
difficult
question.
to be like, yeah, like I like this guy, he's a cool dude, but he doesn't understand this about the game, or he like overemphasizes this,
Hmm.
and like so it's hard for to like recommend like players that are wanting to go pro. Like,
Yeah.
okay, like this guy knows what he's talking about, and he's somehow not on a top team. Like, there's very like
Yeah.
few people that I would put on that list. You would be one of them. But like, how do we go into developing coaches so that way we can develop the region without being like, here's my playbook. Now you know how to beat me.
Yeah. There is a problem right now where I feel like there is a lot of players that are underrated that don't find good teams.
Mm-hmm.
That you can even see the example with Juicy. He had to find the right people, he had to find the right team, and then he just ascended into the heavens. And he had that talent the whole time. I guarantee it, but it just didn't work with the wrong people. This can be a stigma that follows your career, and he's very fortunate that that didn't. Where if you lose, you get pinned with the blame. It's your fault. You're going down. You're never coming back up. Coaches are no different than players in that aspect, where there are people who are they're right for the job, they're not with the right people, and you just kind of don't mesh the right way, and it's kind of pinned on you, and you have the stigma that's like, okay, he probably doesn't know what he's talking about because he's losing, or maybe there's a coach that is winning, and it's getting pinned on him in the right way, where it's like he knows exactly what he's talking about, but maybe he doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
So coaching is more of a veil that's hard to analyze because there's no replays of coaches. There's no you can't just like pull up a replay of like Sathu, for instance, and study how he does stuff. It's behind the scenes. So like how do you know who's a good coach, who's not? It's so tricky, man. Like it's almost borderline impossible. You have to put yourself out there more than anybody else. You have to be putting out not all of your knowledge, but a decent amount to showcase that you're actually well fit for the job into a public setting. Get those spots where you can like be in a trusted circle and then showcase yourself in a good light without that leaking or being like taken across teams outwards. And it's so tricky because like do you just leak all of your good knowledge to look like a good coach and then you're just not valuable because everybody knows what you're talking about? Well, if you
Mm-hmm.
hold it all in, nobody's gonna know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
It's incredibly difficult. Like it's so hard to get up in coaching because you have to showcase just that right ratio of here's what I do, here's my knowledge, this is all I got for you until you put me on the team. Which is why pro coach, like people who go from pro to coaching, have such an advantage because they're just like, yeah, I used to be pro. Anyways, I
Mm-hmm.
know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm with it, sure. So they don't have to show their knowledge. But people who like us who weren't pro are like, okay, here's like 20% of my knowledge. Hopefully that's good enough. And like, it's okay. I mean, I wish I had more. I'm like, well, you could, but it's fine, you know.
Yeah. I think when it comes to dealing with like those situations, I think probably the hardest thing for me coaching was I came in when systems was like very unpopular in NA.
Mhm.
And so like anytime I talk to players about it, they'd be like, whatever. Like Rocket League's unpredictable, et cetera, et cetera. Or something, they'd be like, oh, this coach told me to always do this, so therefore I'm
Yep.
gonna always do that.
Yep.
It's like, well, okay, like if you're just gonna do what that coach said always, and you're just gonna get the same results as always.
Mhm.
Uh, unless like you just become the next Zen. But if you do that, you'll stop doing what your coach said to do always.
Right.
Uh, there, there's this. I feel like there's this stigma that of like the friend coach that still hasn't quite left Rocket League yet. But I feel like it's on its way out, and I feel like there's a lot of people retiring that maybe aren't or are more on the mental side of it than they are like the
Yeah.
tactical side of it. Not to say that the mental side doesn't have value. Us in playoffs, point in case, but but I feel like there's still a lot more room for tactics to grow and it not just be okay. This team figured out the meta for now, but okay, going up against this team, like we need to have this system. They play this system. So we need to worry about playing this way against them. Okay, when we beat them this way, they adjust here. And it really becoming like a playbook of not just, okay, play our style and hope we are better than them in their
Hmm.
style.
Okay.
And players really developing like a depth of play styles that they pull from. And it really starting to become that chess match as well as uh, the individual players playing well and such.
I half agree and half disagree. The parts I agree with was the strategy as well, because that is very important that you have systems to kind of go against each team. But the friend coach thing that you said is also a very important role, I would say, because let's say let's say there's two sides of coaching, right? The mental and the strategy. Let's say you were just like all in on one, so it's like you're just 100% strategy, and then players feel like they can't approach you with any problems because you're just the guy who has strategy and you're just not a friend to them at all. You're the friend coach, right? You're just 100% mental. I really wish he went over strategy a little bit. I'm glad he's there for me. You need a mixture of both. So it's like
Yeah.
there is value in having both of those guys, honestly, on the same team, because that you have an expertise in both. So I think the friend coach is actually not something that needs to die. It just needs to be developed into something that can kind of work with somebody or either get more talent into being strategic.
Yeah. So you think it's more like the friend coach was more like the predecessor to the mental coach.
Um, no, I wouldn't say that. I'd say it's more like if you're friends with somebody, you want to make sure they're doing well, so they're already
Mhm.
doing that. I feel like it's not somebody who's qualified for mentality coaching per se, but they still know like what works with you personally because they're friends with you. So it's like I think if you're talking to like somebody who's obviously like the best psychologist in the world, they're going to figure out what's wrong with you pretty quickly. But so is your friend.
Mhm. I could see that. So you think so what you're saying is you think that those friend coaches, so to speak, they just need to be given more tools to become an even better friend, so to speak.
I think they're already a good friend. I just think they need to figure out where the strategy is lacking. I think they're
Mhm.
already good enough in the friend aspect. They don't need to take it higher.
Mhm.
They're already like they're fulfilling their role. You don't need to be the best S tier everything in
Mhm.
one thing always. You just need to be enough to help somebody. That is your role, is to help.
Mhm.
So the strategy side needs to come in and also help. And if you're not doing that, then you either need another person to be able to do that or learn and talk to your players and figure out, okay, what can I do to do better in this? Because everybody's different. How do I help you?
Yeah. Do you think that there needs to be more like teams of coaches and like one head coach, or do you think that one coach for the most part is enough?
It's either my personal answer or what I think applies to everybody, or both.
I guess like in general, like
Yeah, in general.
do you think
I
it's
think teams of
good?
coaches is better in
Hmm.
general because more eyes is. I would be a hypocrite to not say more eyes is better because that's kind of why I can coach in the first place.
Hmm.
So I think a team of coaches is better just because you have, like, let's say for instance, like two people, different ideas, talk, have a core idea that came from said talk, and now you have something better from it. I mean, that's them meeting on their own time and figuring it out and having a good product that didn't involve the players at all. That's just awesome. That's really good.
Yeah. So when going to okay, here it is. So Brett asked one more question. I think we'll
Yeah, sure.
end up with this since we got to get you ready for your stream. Everybody go follow him. Links in the description. Uh, so how do you improve over the off season when there isn't necessarily a definitive product to prove
Ah, great
that your
question.
theories are working to your players slash team?
Yep. So I was probably crazy for doing this, but off season was like, let's just try stupid stuff. Like let's just stuff that you think is never gonna. Let's just throw it out there and try it. So this is really good if you have off season events because if you lose those, like I mean, who gives a shit if you lose like a monthly or
Glorified
something, right?
scrims.
Yeah, I'm just like. Yeah, everybody says it on Reddit, like, "Oh, this is just the off season. Wait for RCS." Like, I think there's a really good stigma. I love when people on Reddit say that because it just encourages to just be creative on the off season, which you should do. You should try stuff because that is the best time to do it. Not during quals. Do not do
Yeah.
it during quals. But during the off season is kind of where you're like, okay, this is the time to try stuff. So like It's like that thing you said, like, I wanna go off the ceiling, I wanna just be crazy, I wanna, like, try this thing where it's just, like, really wacky and
Mm.
unpredictable. Sure,
Mhm.
that's awesome time for it. See if it works, see who it works against, try stuff, and then note down, "Okay, this works against this does not work at all, this is horrible, throw that out." And then week per week, you just have these crazy ideas and you just keep tossing them and make it fun. You don't make it like, "Okay, this needs to work immediately." I kinda have this game I play where it's just like green light, yellow light, red light. Red light, you hate it. Yellow light, yeah, maybe. And then green light, like, I wanna do this again. Like, it's fun and
Mhm.
I like it. So if you just kind of like poll everybody individually and get the mood of it
Mhm.
per week, you can have a really fun off season. That's kinda like how you make it productive.
Yeah, like I think like one of the funner things I've ever done with one of my teams, I was just like, hey, instead of rotating out, if you get their corner boost after you've made a challenge or anything, I just want you to sit on their backboard.
Yep, yep. That's one of the
It's
things that would happen, yep.
yeah, it's just like
So
just sit
fun.
on their backboard and like watch the field and be just like don't necessarily hope for one specific thing, but just sit there and watch and look for where those openings might be.
Mhm.
And it's like, okay, cool. So like, they get up there and it's like, okay, like now I know that if this is happening, like I probably need to get back a little bit sooner. Like,
Yeah, and
like
failure also teaches you better methods to do the thing you're already doing because 'cause you're seeing why it's working.
yeah, and then you're seeing why it's not working. You're seeing like, okay, because like, have you ever done a replay review and you're just like, you know what, you should have just stayed on their backboard here, like. Like, I don't think any coach has ever necessarily
Can't
said that during like,
can't say I've said those very words, but
but like there are times like it's like, you know what, like the experimentation of it of the off season is I think definitely underutilized. But also, this is the first time we've had an off season in how long?
well, our off seasons are just so long
Well,
now.
yeah.
I feel like the failure in a lot of coaching. This is me just spitballing because I don't know. I don't know what
Hmm.
goes behind the scenes. I'm still a hypocrite with it, where I just assume other people are doing it wrong because I don't know what the heck they're doing. But I do notice with off season events that everybody just kind of plays their game. They're just like
Hmm.
they just show up. They're like, okay, here we are. Let's try. Oh, we lost. Doesn't matter. We won. Cool.
Hmm.
Is what it is. But like I had off-season tournaments that we either like bombed out of or won,
Hmm.
honestly, just off of like trying stuff and it was fun.
Yeah. Do you think that that has to do with like more of a habit of coaching forming of we have to do well this event or we're out, and like because we've never really had that space at like the higher level, that it's just become almost like a habit of, oh, we got to win this, we got to win this, we got to win this, let's make this small change now so we can win right now, and versus like that long-term growth.
That's an interesting question. I feel like a lot of people right now kind of just go for the band-aid approach where they just like fix things really quickly and
Hmm.
they're just like, here's a couple tips, I'm out. Peace.
Hmm.
I'm getting my Uber Eats and just watching now. But again, I don't know because I'm not in those calls. It's just me theory crafting about what I have observed with teams where it's just like they're not really changing anything. Per se. Like I feel like if you are a good coach nowadays, it is very easy to get top 16 because you can just like plan against a team that's just going to play consistently.
Hmm. Yeah, I
And
think.
I think a lot of teams are not finding value in that, and they're really shooting themselves in the foot by not getting a coach who can do that because I think there's plenty of people who can.
Yeah, I think when it comes to top 16, I think is probably like both easier and harder to get into right now. Like it's harder because you have to build up that team and
Yeah.
like get them underneath that philosophy, and that's going to take like I think it's too late now to try and do that for this split. But like I think if you started like right when the first split ended and like you brought in a coach and you got players together and they're just like, okay, like we just believe in this coach and this coach is gonna set this structure for us and we're just gonna try it, and or players have a structure they want to do and they find a coach that can teach that structure. Uh,
Mhm.
like I feel like if they had done that like at the end of the last split, you easily could be like a consistent top 16 team.
Oh yeah. Yep, and I feel like a lot of coaches don't put themselves in the shoes of the player, which is a big mistake. Where from a coaching standpoint, yes, coaching makes sense. It's great. I think I do a good job. I think that I can get a team to top 16 easily. Put yourself in the shoes of the player. I have to change everything I've ever known for
Hmm.
you, this guy I just met. What? This is crazy. I'm already doing well. I'm already like a top 20 team by myself. You want me to change everything and potentially just be horrible? Yeah, I'm asking you that. Can you do it? Like it's hard for them. Like,
Yeah.
and most of them are young and they've never known change like that before. They're used to just going to school, coming home, grinding, doing well. That's their life. That's it. No change needed.
Yeah. I think also just uh, anytime you introduce change in general, like it's scary because you're like,
Yeah.
okay, like this is what got me here. So it's like, I'm a consistent top 16 team. It's like, cool. Like, well, what changes do you need to make to get top 8 consistently? Oh,
Mhm.
I just need to hit that Flipper said. I just need to shoot a little bit better. It's like, technically you're not wrong, but also
That's
like
not consistent
look
though.
at the like why are you shooting poorly? Like is it your positioning? Like is it the way you're thinking about things?
Mhm.
And so it's like making that change is definitely difficult, especially if like you had it ingrained in you for so long.
Yeah.
Uh,
That's
especially
that's the
with
that's the
ranked,
part right there.
especially with six man's culture.
Oh,
Oh
now you're getting into some some dirt there.
yeah, six man's the funny thing is when I was coaching Defiance or Audacity or whatever name we were under at the time, before quals, I'd be like, all right, guys, we got quals in 2 weeks, no more six mans. Because like, is it?
Makes sense. I like that idea.
Yeah, because it's like because all you're gonna do is learn how to, or you're just gonna develop habits that are bad for the team because you're trying to carry people who arguably might not even should be in rank B, and you're just going to develop the habits of okay, well, my teammate is always going to mess up, and so as soon as you see that situation, like if you're playing a lot of six mans, what you practice is going to come out, especially in stressful situations.
Mhm.
uh, and so you gotta be, I kind of just tried to nip that in the butt and be just like, nah, you just aren't playing six mans, like because anytime you play six mans, like you immediately go backboard while you're on zero boost versus like, I don't know, doing something smart like rotating and grabbing boost and letting your two teammates with boost like do something.
Yeah,
Uh,
I can
so
see it.
yeah,
Still think six fans is way better than ranked, but
yeah, ranked is a ranked twos. I think is. I've watched a lot of replays from like NA versus EU twos, and my God, everybody EU is just so much better at twos. Like,
I haven't actually watched EU twos. Now I think about it, I've watched more NA twos, obviously, but I've only just watched RLCS
mhm.
EU stuff. I've never really like. Is there something that you've learned from like the EU two style that kind of translates to why they're doing well?
The big thing that I've noticed is second man is never passive. Like they're always actively doing something. And then
Interesting.
secondly, uh, first man never leaves the ball until he's forced it or got it to like a teammate or at least an awkward spot. Like a
Yeah.
lot of people in NA, like they rely on their teammate to buy them time to get boost and get in position. And that's like the default mindset is, oh, I'm first. I'm supposed to try and score. Second man's supposed to buy time for me to get back, which in the worst case scenario, that's true. Uh, but with EU, they're not they're not making plays that put themselves out. They're making it to where if they make a play and it doesn't work out, they're making decisions to where the play not working out, they're still near the ball or in a position where they can land and grab three pads and immediately force that ball for their teammate.
Got it. So it's more
Like,
helping out second man instead of second man helping them out.
yeah, it's this weird, like, I wouldn't say weird, but like definitely weird for NA where
Different.
like uh, they're all fighting for possession and space and they're all fighting for their team to have the best opportunity possible versus let me try and score this and you try and bail me out or clean up, uh, versus this. Like, I hate to use the trope of they play like a team, but it's more true than like the just constant trying 1v2. And
Yep. Yeah, it sets up more chances for success as opposed to just all in on one.
yeah, and there's a lot more sustained pressure that I've noticed. Like
Hmm.
it in NA, it's like, oh, we tried to score. All right, everybody get boost.
I wonder if that's why EU people come over to NA and struggle in twos because they're trying to implement that style and it doesn't work if somebody's kind of
You,
just ball centered. Because I
yeah,
feel like when NA goes over to EU, they do well in twos, but that's because they're more ball centered and can kind of storm over people if they have that practice. But it does not translate well to threes, in my opinion, to do that because you will have more. You can't 1v3 very easily.
yeah. Like I still think EU is better at twos in general.
I
Just
think they are better
because,
if they have two people with the same mentality on the same team. I think they are
yeah,
worse if it is 1-1.
yeah,
Um, and I think they are better if it is both European on the same team because they can work off each other and perform well.
yeah. Because like if NA played the way they do, like if we took two NA players and dropped against two like EU players, like with this stylistic difference, like EU's gonna win because they're not gonna rotate back just because the attack didn't get on the ball. Like it's like the way I describe it is first man ball chases until second man has an opportunity to do something. And like it's insane how well it works when I get a teammate that thinks like that.
Yeah. Hmm.
Or at least like one that I'm like hanging out with them, just like, hey guys, like let's you just ball chase until they put the ball in an open space. And they're like, cool. And so they'll just dive at things and they'll be like, did I do it right? And I'm like, yep. As I'm shooting it into their net. Because it's like, oh, like I don't have to rotate back post and just give them a ton of space. Mind blowing.
Yeah, I think that if you were to like kind of go around that idea, because you said that EU would beat NA in twos, I do think that is true most of the time. I do think that NA has a higher peak because of their play
Yes.
style,
Yeah.
and that's kind of what people. I see this all the time. Like, oh, if they were on, they would have just destroyed this team. They were just kind of off today, and it's just like, well, that's a lack of consistency talking, and that's because
Hmm.
they're trying to be very ambitious and try difficult things. Like, how many times did we see an NA team versus an EU team at the major, and like NA just had like a mistouch and it was a goal because they just were
Yeah.
really ambitious.
Yeah. Like they're playing for like, when had Sathiel on, it's like NA goes for like a 15% chance to score and then
Yeah,
gives up if it doesn't happen.
but 50% of the
Versus,
time it works every time.
yeah. Uh, and EU, like they're just like, let's do something as a team to where we get a 33% chance. Because then all
Oh
we need
yeah.
is 3 chances versus 10 chances. And that's, you know, if you give up 10 chances, it's like, well, now you're below drop rate. Good luck, you know?
But the problem with that is that there's things that people are comfortable with, right? So there's
Yeah.
people who are more cautious that want to do that style of like sustained pressure, but there's people who are just like aggressive, like that's their personality. You
Mhm.
can't change that. You can't like so you want to like push them in a direction that maybe you dial it down just a little bit. But if I tell like if I tell beast mode specifically, you just need to not go for like crazy shit,
Mhm.
and I'm limiting him like tremendously. I'm just gonna be like, okay, there are times like where
Mhm.
there are times where maybe if you are just like isolated that you can just take a little bit of time, but other than that, you just go, man. You do your thing. You're a baller, right?
Yeah, I think there's also like different ways you could get that aggression out, Like it doesn't
In what
necessarily
ways?
have to be like the mechanical outplay as much as like a timing outplay or like there's more than one way to be aggressive in Rocket League. And I think not necessarily telling them to don't go for crazy stuff, but just like, hey, add this into your arsenal of things that you can be aggressive with.
Okay, I kind of understand, but I kind of don't.
Like like instead of being like, okay, this needs to like immediately score, like make this the most awkward corner bounce possible, or like the most awkward ceiling bounce possible.
But I feel like that does change like their
Hmm.
mentality and setup to things because maybe
Hmm.
they're just used to like they're used to doing that
Hmm.
off of just being aggressive and just like making a crazy shot on target that forces them to have an awkward touch to the corner. So they'll be like, okay, I'm already doing that, and they just
Hmm.
double down on their own thinking.
Yeah, I think it depends like player by player. It's almost
Yes,
like
very much so.
it's
Yeah.
almost like there's a specific job that requires a specific skill set to
I was thinking
address these
specifically in the
things.
case of like
Yeah.
if it were beast mode, like what
Hmm.
you would tell him to do. And again, nobody is more qualified to do that than Sathu, so we would never like even get halfway there. But I'm just saying, like, if I were in that spot, I know how players like him would react to that information.
Hmm.
Not saying him specifically, but people who kind of play similar to his style, and they just love to be aggressive and just get people to challenge him because he wants to go over him, he wants to go around him, he loves just like going up in the air and just having people try to challenge him because he just wants to feel like the baller, right? He wants to
Hmm.
get people to just test him. He wants that test. He wants
Yeah.
everyone up in the air with him just to get around him. Like that's something that they want. They want people in their face.
Yeah. I think also just like the timing of it, I think is like the most important thing. Because it's like on my way of playing ranked threes for the first time in a while, uh, I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to experiment with this. I'm going to sit in my net and just bang the ball anytime it's free near me. I did that for, I think I
I'm mad at
gained like,
you.
yeah, I literally just, I think I got like 200 MMR without ever touching the opponent's half, except like when I went for kickoffs and like had to recover off of them. It was just like, it's such a bad Rocket League. And
Yes, and that's why I'm mad at you because then you're gonna get slaughtered when you creep up and have to.
yeah, and so like it was funny watching that. And I make that point is just like because that's the complete opposite mentality, and it working in that similar way where it's just like try
Yeah.
and score everything versus do nothing so that way you don't get scored on.
Well, it goes back to what I said earlier. Like
Like
you rely on something, and then it comes a point where it's like, well, we didn't practice the other thing, and
yeah.
now we are in trouble because now we're going against people who know what they're doing.
Mhm. Yeah.
So you have to practice the good habits, even if you just sit in net every game and get 200 MMR.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah. But that speaks more to how low ranked from how little I played threes than
That's
anything
true. Yeah,
else.
probably
Yeah.
better than you give yourself credit for.
Yeah. But I guess leading for this last point, when it comes
Okay.
to coaching ranked, we've talked a lot about like the professional side of it. Uh, at what point do you think rotating actually starts? Like, do you think it's like around the champ level? Do you think it's not till like SSL? Like, at what point do you think the idea of playing as a team in some capacity, or at least playing for a teammate in certain situations, like starts to become common?
I can say pretty specifically what I think. This is not like the law or anything,
Oh
but
yeah.
it used to be diamond. Like
Mhm.
diamond used to be where you would rotate. Now it is plat because people are actually watching a lot of Rocket League content because there's just so many pros putting out information now.
Mhm.
I think plats are picking it up. Golds can. I don't think the majority of golds do rotate. I think they just turn on the ball and see the ball and go for the ball, but plats right now I'd say is like where rotation begins where let's say for instance a plat sees a ball just rocketing downfield and it's a little bit awkward for them and they're like I don't have to jump for this so I'm going to go back. That
Mhm.
is the first essence of rotation that somebody like clicks with where it's just like this is
Yeah.
over my head I'm going to go back as opposed to just like going for the ball no matter what just because it's in front of you. That's the turning point for rotation. Like that's that like click.
Yeah, I think that's where it begins to start as well. Like, I think more the diamond era. I think the plat, it's not so much that they don't want to go for it as much as, oh, that's just over my head and I can't jump that high. So,
But a gold would try.
yeah,
A gold would definitely try to. They would like backflip over it and try to like touch it in any way possible.
yeah. I think it's sort of like the diamond plat era or area is where it starts. And I think that's what makes these ranks like super awkward. Is like you have people that do it and then you have people that don't.
Yes.
it's like you have to get a read on your teammates so quick to figure out which one are they. And
Yeah. There's a pretty heavy because I used to think that way, so that's why I struggle with it a lot. But there is a new mentality that I figured out. This is why pros win so often is that they just expect anything and everything unless they know who you are. If they don't recognize your name, you are now the worst player in the world, and I'm going to be ready for that. You probably see it in twos all the time. I think I was watching a Squishy video yesterday where he's like, I don't know who this guy is. I'm gonna play back a little bit more. I was like, yep, that's
yeah,
they're preparing for the worst case scenario. If you have to earn their trust basically.
yeah.
So it's either a name they recognize and you've already earned that trust. If you're not pro, it's not going to happen very often. So they just don't trust anybody basically at your rank. So it's a very frustrating way to play. It's very focus intensive where it's just like I have to prepare for every scenario and then just if I have the ball, that's my time. If I don't, the worst case scenario is probably going to happen. So I'm just going to be ready for it.
Yep. So what you're saying by playing worst case scenario is the best way to play, that me sitting in net and gaining 200 MMR off of it was the right way to solo queue through rank.
Technically, yes, but there comes a point where it doesn't work and you should have the ball, not just bang it away like you said you were, so you're half right.
Hey, at least I was banging it away on net. But also, it was really sad.
But you could do something more, man. That's your time to ball out. You get 100 boosts, pop it up to yourself, have a little freedom, a little NA pizzazz.
Yeah,
get a flipper set or two, maybe 7,
Yeah, but at my rank, you get you get a touch in the air, and then teammates like, oh, cool, he passed it because he got one touch in the air.
Yeah, be faster then. Come on.
Yeah, just get good here.
Pop it up to yourself, just straight up. You got the dominance. That shit's already gonna go straight up. Come on.
Yep, it does. I get so much height off of pops. It's unfair.
Yeah, it's been my transition with Fennec is that I'm popping outwards more. I'm like, oh, I can't reach that. Uh-oh.
Yeah.
So
I guess, it's been a good talk. I think you have stream to get to.
Maybe later tonight.
Maybe later tonight.
I got food I got to get to. I haven't eaten yet.
Ooh, yeah, food.
Yeah,
definitely.
Food is good.
Definitely important. Well, hey, thanks for coming on. I think we had some
it was fun.
Really fun conversations. Go get his coaching once every 3 months.
I'm a big proponent that some coaches kind of scam people. So I'm very upfront about you do not need coaching sessions more than like every couple 2-3 months because it is my job to like outline what you should be doing like more than just a week out. Like I don't know why coaches just be like, okay, we're gonna work on it this week, and then next week you'll see me and we'll like talk about it, and then just like no, like you can DM me, right? That's like a 5-minute interaction.
Yeah.
But there's no way I should just be having a session every week with somebody just because like, oh, let's check in how you're doing. Good. All right, sweet.
Yeah.
Come to me in 2 months. Like that you should improve enough in 2 months where I have new stuff for you, not just doubling down on what I already taught you.
Yeah, that or you haven't been practicing.
Yeah, that also is the case for some people.
Yeah, which is entirely my problem.
Training packs, come on.
Yeah.
20 minutes of striker training a day. It's not hard. Come on.
Yeah. Sure. All right. Well, hey, I think we're both about to go get some food. Thanks for having on. It's been a lot of fun. We got to do this again sometime.
We had some good conversations. I felt like they got pretty deep. That's sick.
Yeah.